Hey there, everyone, and welcome to another video. We have arrived. Today is Sunday, July 23, the station date of Venus retrograde in Leo. I've already done a video on Venus retrograde, and I can pop a link in the show notes below for that. But what I want to do today is explore some themes of medicine with Venus retrograde, because this week has proven for a lot of people with Venus stationing retrograde, we've had the nodes change signs, the idea of relationship, aloneness, rejection, and loneliness have been real themes for many people this week. Venus retrograde is one of the more personal and felt transits that we experience. Obviously, Mercury retrogrades often, and that can be an annoyance, pain in the rear type of transit. It's not something that is potentially life-shifting or altering. Mars is frustration and tension when things are not moving at the speed that we would rather prefer them to be. But when Venus goes retrograde, the experience is a changing of the guard of the things that we want, the things that we desire. And this is, everything to do with relationships, to do with pleasure, to do with fun and joy. And the things that we really enjoy as human beings, Venus really brings, she's about the material pleasures, not so much the spiritual or the philosophical. She's the pleasures of the flesh, the pleasures of being human. And so this week, today she descends. And so now the question is, so now what? So Venus is a compromiser. She is the eggs and the milk. She's the unifier, the binder, and the connector. So she's the compromiser. She's willing to forego her own desires oftentimes to to get those Venusian pleasures. But when she retrogrades, she kind of goes a little metal AF. And she's a little bit more kind of, dark, rogue, and she is less willing to do the Venus things. And so how this may show up for you is that it becomes this process of, do I still want the things that I said I wanted? Maybe I want something different. And what does that look like? Now, I think there is some real medicine to be gleaned from the fact that Venus is retrograding in the sign of the sun. So not only is it a Venus issue, but it's also a little bit of a sun issue. And also we are now having the sun move into Leo on the 23rd, at least here in Australia, for Leo season. So Venus is kind of going into the proverbial underworld with her host shining that light on her. So I want to give you a few tips on how this may, what can we do with this? So 1, reassess what you expect, not what you give. Now, in the sign of the sun, Venus is operating from the center of gravity. The sun is the organizing and centralizing principle of the entire cosmos, and it is the gravity and the fulcrum from which all of the other planets pivot. So there's that real centrifying, unifying connection with the sun. But as we know, the sun shines just because it does. And so when Venus goes retrograde in this sign, it's an invitation to turn that light in, to go back to your center, and to, like the beating heart of your body, the sun is the beating heart of the cosmos. And what is it that you need so you can still continue to freely give, but to maybe alter, adjust, or shift expectations? So the sun gives, it asks for nothing in return. And so this transit may ask us, have we been expecting something in return in the wrong places. And then losing our sense of center, our sense of power, our sense of radiance and light for giving, giving selflessly, but then selfishly expecting a return. The sun's principle is not the stock market. We do not expect dividends on our investments when it comes to the sun. We give because we do, and we give because we can. And that's exactly what the sun does. So this retrograde might ask you to turn that light within and readjust or reassess the way in which you give this light. How do you radiate that light, that warmth, that radiance, that life affirming, all knowing? Because when we give and expect return, we're not giving that light selflessly. Now, we can give our light selflessly to children, but when it comes to adult relationships in particular, they are much more Venusian, in the sense that at her heart, Venus is transactional. I think in a lot of astrological echo chambers, Venus does get a little bit diminished as being this sort of fair maiden and harmony, beauty, and benefic. But she also has a dark side. She also has a transactional side. And you read anything from ancient magic, and you will know that this is true. So when the solar principle within us becomes abandoned, and this is what we do in adult relationships, this is what we do, maybe it's a career, maybe it's with money, whatever it is, the house topics for you, when we give this solar principle and we abandon the center. So if you think about the structure of the sun, it's unfathomably hot. And then, of course, the core of that sun is a gazillion times hotter than that. And we can forget that. We can forget that within ourselves. We can radiate our light, warmth, and generosity, but it's just who we are. We don't have to pour ourselves out begging for breadcrumbs from the rich man's table. So if we drift along with our solar energy untethered, reaching out or grasping or grabbing for anything that's meaningless pleasure or a distraction, we are going to be miserable. So the sun gives, and with Venus retrograde in the sun sign, it's asking us in the nature of which we are giving. Whether we choose to bask, it's a beautiful sunny day where I am, even though it's winter, and I'm still in a t-shirt, so that's kind of what winter's like where I live, but the sun is always shining, I guess, is the point. Whether it's cloudy, whether it's storming, whether those clouds are ones you don't recognize seeing as a child, even if there's an attempt to block out the sun still shines. The sun still gives, and it still pours its light out like ruptured lava, this heat and abundance. The sun gives without ceasing, and our hearts beat without ceasing. I mean, obviously, eventually they do, but from the moment we're conceived, it beats endlessly. So like the sun, our center is even hotter. And when Venus retrogrades, she goes into the underworld and she gets reanimated by the sun, reinfused by the sun. And that's going to help reinforce that solar light. It's going to help reinforce or give new energy into the way that we give. So you have to keep this. You have to keep the center through the retrograde. If you give and expecting a return, you sever that power. You sever the demand. If you sever your power and demand the universe in return, the sun doesn't do that. So the question is, why would we do that? It makes no sense. So solar infusions can be very beneficial. Yes, it's Venus retrograde, but remembering the solar essence, the solar power can be really helpful for you during this transit. whether it's a candle, which is a brand new one I've lit for this video, whether it's spending time in the sun, whether it's doing sun salutations in the morning, or going outside and having your first coffee in the day and getting that early morning sunlight into your eyes, which is been proven to help you with sleep, with kind of mitigating blue light radiation from computers and things like that. So the sun, it's just another way of saying, is an essential life force. And so when we have a retrograde through the sun sign, we need to remember what our life force is, and going out into the sun and getting our own version of photosynthesis in whichever way that takes shape for you, symbolically or literally. I have red hair. I don't spend a lot of time in the sun, at least not on this continent. So yeah, it's sometimes the symbolic sunlight can be very, very helpful. Now, number 2, another idea with this Venus retrograde is the ways of the underworld are perfect and they may not be questioned. This is a journey. And when we embark upon this journey, there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of worries, and there's a lot of concern. So this line is taken from a grimoire poem, where instead of asking questions and finding answers, or attempting to find the answers, I should say, allow yourself the experience of not knowing the state of your marriage, not knowing the state of your relationship, not knowing the state of your finances, not knowing where this journey is going to take you, whether you're looking at the myth of Persephone, whether you're looking at the myth of Inyana, whether it is any type of Venusian archetype. You don't know where you're going to go with this, but you know that you will return. You know that in 40 days' time, Venus is going to rise as a morning star. You will come back, but when you do, you're not going to be the same. And yes, there may be some loss, but that loss is often a gain. Now, the journey into the underworld, when we embark upon it, it can be scary, because it is this feeling of being stripped down, being stripped naked and bare. And that can feel like opening up your heart to somebody, or recognizing that the ways in which you've opened your heart you've left yourself naked and stripped bare, but have lost your power in the process. So no one ever ascends from the underworld unmarked, but they do always carry the experience with them. And as cliche as it is, you will often come back stronger and better than ever. Now, if you wish to return from the underworld, no one wants to be stuck down there forever. There's this idea of sacrifice, or having to give something up, having to pay the ferryman, having to pay your due. And so Venus, being that planet of pleasure, of sugar and alcohol and all the good things, another symbolic gesture you can do during this transit is to give something up, to pay attention. And when you give something up, you value it more. And Venus is often symbolized to the idea of value. So there is a trade that takes place here. And to use the analogy of the stock market, yes, you may have to give up that money now, but the hope is, or the expectation is, that you will gain something. You may not gain it immediately. You may not gain it, obviously there's dips and troughs. So that is symbolic of the process. It doesn't mean you fasted for 21 days and all my problems are solved. There's, like nature, nothing is linear. And this journey can remind us that when we give something up, it's an act of faith, it's an act of hope, that the energy that you give in this is for a gain that is not always explained. It's not always tangible, but it's felt. Now, in the sun sign, it's the idea of giving up the idea of expectation, giving up the idea of validation, adoration, and just shining, just being sovereign, just returning to the center, because it's just who you are. Just like the sun is who it is, Venus retrograde just in Leo reminds you of who you are. So the idea of giving something up, I've been toying with this for a while because I don't like to give things up, I'm going to be honest. But you know, chocolate I've considered, and I'm not sure if I'm really down for that. But alcohol, and I don't drink a lot. I can take it or leave it, but at least for this retrograde, I am actively choosing to leave it. So, you know, for you, it's going to be a question or a concept of whatever vice that you may have that makes you lose your center, that grasps its tentacles on you and drags you down into the upside down world. And if you watch Stranger Things, you will get what I'm saying with that. Now, social media can be that thing for people, because often social media can bring feelings of envy or jealousy, or I'm not as visible as this person, or I don't have what this person has. And it can kind of, that comparison is the thief of joy type of idea there. So consider what you might give up, or consider even what you might return back to. So as an example, for me, Leo is my third house, and I've barely picked up a dumbbell in this calendar year. And I really want to get back to that. So it's those kind of daily rituals that, you know, make me feel strong, make me feel powerful, not only in body, but also spirit, mind, and of course, cardiovascular too, which is the heart. So my third point is it's okay to lose. Leo is a sign that likes to win a lot of the time, and we are allowed to lose. And it's okay that that gain isn't always a good thing. Sometimes the things that we lose actually makes us more appreciative of what we actually do have. So the reason I sort of come to the idea is that losing is okay is the fact that the South Node has moved into Venus's sign this week. So nothing in nature is linear. That everything is a cycle of life, you know, birth, death, renewal. It's, you know, whether it's with human beings, whether it's with nature, whether it's with the seasons, everything is circular, you know, it's a cycle. But us as humans, particularly in the Western culture, we expect a linear trajectory of growth. We expect linear weight loss or linear gains in particular areas of our life. And nothing in nature is like that. And let's be honest, loss hurts. You know, it's not often that we lose something and there's not a tinge of pain or hurt that comes with that. But often times we lose things knowing they need to be lost. And this is particularly true of Venus retrograde periods. Loss hurts, but it's often beauty is pain. And many, many moons ago, I was a beauty therapist, and this lady I used to do waxing treatments on, her daughter would, she was only little, and she'd say, "Oh, beauty is pain, mummy." And I think that's very much, you know, the childbirth is beautiful. It's also painful. You know, sending your child off to school for the first time, it's beautiful, but it's also painful. So beauty and pain are very much interlinked as part of the human experience. So sometimes we need to know that loss is coming and loss is inevitable, but we tend to focus on the loss as opposed to what is gained. You know, we often hold on to things as well from the fear of losing something. We might hold on to a relationship where our hearts are not appreciated in the way that we would like them to be. We hold on to things out of fear, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, or fear of being alone, which are things that Leo can struggle with. So it is that giving with your heart and expecting nothing in return makes the idea of losing easier. So the Venus retrograde can help us reassess the idea of giving without gain. Now, the opposite is also true. Again, nothing is linear, and astrology is no different. It's also okay to hold on. You know, the heart holds on to its center. The process sometimes with loss isn't about the loss, it's about what you gain afterwards. I had to make a little bit of a painful choice this week. Some lemon and lime trees that I'm growing. I just knew that the branches weren't going to be strong enough. So the wood of the tree was not going to be strong enough to hold the weight of the fruit it was producing. So I had to make, anyone who's grown anything, you know, whether it's thinning seeds or what have you, as a grower, it goes against our instinct to have to prune, to thin out seeds, or to cut off fruit that's going to be beautiful. But in order to get a better harvest, a stronger harvest, and, you know, better sized fruit down the track, we do have to sometimes make that choice. And the loss, it's a loss in the short term, but a gain in the long term. So sometimes it's that idea of holding on or keeping the faith for the future, even if that means a little bit of loss now. So loss and gain are often two sides of the same coin. So when it comes to the idea of it's okay to hold on, it might be okay for you to hold on to some values, to hold on to some aspects of your sovereignty, or choosing your hill to die on in a particular situation. So part of Venus retrograde is inviting you to sit with the infinite wisdom of the heart. We tend to think of wisdom and smart, intelligence as being the brain, but Venus retrograde asks you to tap back into the intelligence of the heart and decide what is negotiable for you and what is not. And hold on to that, because that is the sun holding on to its center, still giving its light, like a ruptured volcano spilling out the lava, giving it freely, but it still holds its own gravity. So it's okay to stick with the things that you value, to that what you know to be true. And that doesn't matter what that might mean for your relationship, for your friendship, for your career, for social expectations. When we all sit with the truth and the infinite wisdom of our heart, it's all you have. And when you can stand by that, you can weather the storm of loss, you can weather the storm of change, and you can weather the storm of the underworld and not knowing when you will emerge from that light. It's also important to remember that the sun draws from its own roots of expansive power and fathomless time. So it's a little bit of a philosophical, poetic chat for you today. But I do hope that's helped you maybe contemplate that there's something a lot more deeper, a lot more wisdom and knowledge and light to be gained from a transit that can otherwise be seen as a little bit dark. And my invitation to you is to find your own inner metal, and where you're prepared to kind of go a little bit wild, a little bit hard, or a little bit rogue, in order for you to soften back into the heart and know that that is the infinite beating of your existence. And when you ignore that, when you don't honor that, that's when things do get messy for us. So until next time, I hope you enjoyed that. If you'd like to learn more about me and the work that I do, I'll pop my website down below. It's cassandratyndall.com. So until next time, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Venus retrograde. What house is it for you, or what happenings you're already experiencing thus far?